Amanda Kleinhens, at least that's what we've been told her name is. Just moments ago I was also told it could be Klein's, or it could be AK-40, I'm not asking about that one. But Amanda is coming with us from IKEA to talk about this topic, and we'll talk about IKEA a little bit as well. So this whole marketing thing.
Yeah.
Should we actually be doing that, or?
I mean, sounds like a good idea.
Okay. All right, any questions? We're done. See you next month.
The answer is yes. Well, hi everyone. As everyone mentioned, my name's Amanda Kleinhens, and I'm actually right up the street at IKEA. We're off of Boston Mills Road over by Route 8. I've been with IKEA now for about 6 years, and I started as a PR purist, so I have a PR background doing a lot of media relations and talking to newspapers and publications and things like that. Also wear a marketing hat, obviously, and do a lot of different things when it comes to marketing solutions. And then this sort of hybrid of social media emerged, and it's created an opportunity for some integration. So I've moved from sort of this marketing PR background more into a social media marketing function and role at IKEA. So it's been really fun for me, and love working with IKEA. And we thought today, we could probably just talk a little bit about social media and what it means to you and how you can integrate it into your business. As Bob was saying, social media is one of those things where I think it can be a little daunting, it can be a little scary, but it is such a critical part, I think, of an overall marketing mix that it's hard to kind of ignore it at this point. And it's not to say that it's right for every business or that every single network and channel is right for you to be on, because there's so many, right? I mean, how do you possibly choose between all the ones that are out there now? You can go for the ones that are more popular or maybe ones that are more obscure, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it has to be the right fit for your business and to actually generate the types of things that are going to help you achieve your goals and objectives. So I guess, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that, again, social media doesn't really sort of work on its own, sort of on this island by itself. You can go ahead and launch a Facebook page and gain a couple hundred followers, and that's great. But, I think really what the starting point is, or what we like to talk a lot about, is how that integrates into your business strategy. So before you can really think about jumping onto social media, it's time to take a quick step back and just make sure that as a business, you know what your goals and objectives are. If you're trying to move sales, if you're trying to increase awareness, if you're trying to drive traffic to one thing or another, that's really where you need to start, and making sure that you've properly identified your key audiences. So, of course, your customers are going to be your number one priority at all times, but how else can you utilize other types of people who are out there to really help do some of that work for you? Is it some of the partners that you have, the associations that you belong to, your local media or your national media? Maybe it's just getting involved in the community and just connecting with different businesses, and even if it's a restaurant or someone who you have a connection to and helping them to spread your word for you. That's all kind of going back into your business strategy and ways that you can connect with them beyond social media. Because you can send them an email, or you can send them information in a brochure or through direct mailing. So you really shouldn't have to feel like you're recreating the wheel, I guess, when it comes to social media. Hopefully there are a couple of these pieces in place that you already have that you can apply to social media. Or sometimes social media gives us the opportunity to maybe take a couple steps back and think of, okay, let's go back to basics, let's lay a better foundation for ourselves so that once we jump onto social media can work for us instead of us working for social media. So those are some of the key things that we like to talk about before we even jump into Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or what have you. It's really more about identifying some of those core goals and objectives and determining what your audience strategy is going to be, so you even know which one will actually work the best for you in the first place. And then along with that too, once you kind of identify some of those key foundation pieces, it's also important to be thinking about it holistically. So you can think about jumping onto social media and saying, okay, well, I'm going to write my bio. Facebook gives me the opportunity to say about me. What do I want to say about my company, my business? Well, whatever you're saying on Facebook should be directly aligning with what you have on your website. And it should also directly align with what you're putting out in your newsletter and what you have on your other marketing pieces and collateral. So again, you don't want to necessarily be starting from scratch and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is such a big undertaking, I have to start all over again. I have to come up with a picture, and I have to come up with the copy to populate the page. You should, hopefully, in theory, already have a lot of those tools at your fingertips. So all you need to do is maybe make some minor tweaks to fit the style of the channels that you're going to be on without feeling like you have to start all over again. And that also then kind of dovetails into everything else, right? So you talk about a digital strategy, a marketing strategy, your SEO strategy, all of the keywords that you're using to optimize your presence online and some of the other channels, whether you're talking digital advertising or your website or something else. All of that should be aligned with what you're doing with social media. Otherwise, social media, again, kind of breaks off and floats on an island by itself. It doesn't really work for you the way that you hope to, because now you're creating a separate set of keywords and key performance indicators that you're not being able to tie directly back into the rest of your business goals. And especially when it comes to the idea of search, and we know that through Bing and through Google and things like that, a lot of times if you type in the name of a business, hopefully the number one thing that pops up is your business. But underneath that, interestingly, what's been popping up a lot more often are social media channels. So you might see the company name and that website come up first and foremost, and then the second result is Facebook, the third result is Twitter, the fourth is Pinterest. So it's carrying a lot more weight than it used to, right? Because a lot of people do find value in social media. They're wanting to connect with your business. They're wanting to learn more about you and feel like they're part of a community. So they're going to go to your website to get a lot of that direct information when they want to get some of their questions answered. They might go to social media to get some of the multimedia, more dynamic content, feel like they're connecting with other people who have like interests or questions or needs that they do, or they can maybe have open discussion. So the search engines are placing a lot more importance on things like social media channels. So if someone clicks on your website and they see you one way and your visual branding looks one way and the things you have on your website through your text is one way, and then the second result is Facebook and they click on that and it looks totally different, there's a disconnect there. And now you've lost an opportunity to create some brand loyalty and some connectivity with what people are associating with your name, which is ultimately the capstone of your brand. So all of those things kind of need to be considered before you even think about what channels you want to go onto, because if you go on and you say, you know what, Pinterest sounds awesome. I think it sounds like it's a really good idea. My business is very visual and we have a lot of photography we'd like to showcase. You start a Pinterest page, you get distracted, the person who was supposed to be managing it left, whatever the case may be, all of a sudden you have an empty page now. And even though you think, well, gosh, no one's paying attention, we only have 5 followers, and no one was really connected to us in the first place, so we'll just leave it how it is. Well, when you Google your own company name and Pinterest comes up on your third or fourth result, as people are trying to get to know you a little bit better and understand who you are as a company or as a brand, that might still show. It just because you don't have a lot of people driving to it directly through your own promotion, people are still able to find you through search engines. So there should be, I think, a little bit of weight put on which social media channels you become active on and where you feel like you can dedicate the most and best resources to. So it's not about getting out there and getting on everything and kind of having your hands in 6 pots and one's boiling over and one's catching fire. You want to make sure that you have a couple of things that you're doing pretty well and you feel pretty comfortable with, so that when people go to find you and they notice that you have a presence on social media, that you're able to really showcase your brand and highlight what you do and why it's important for them to be working with you.
So let me jump on one of those points, because you kept coming back to it a lot, is goals and objectives.
Yes.
When you talk about goals and objectives for a company, is that something that's coming from top down? Is that something that is specifically aimed at marketing? How would you define goals and objectives?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's a great question, Bob.
Yes! Yes!
Yes. Okay, so business first and foremost, right? Because at the end of the day, it's great to have 500 followers on Twitter, 600 likes on Facebook, but you're trying to move sales. You're trying to recruit great people. You're trying to do a couple of things that tie to your business. So before you can start to identify how you want to specifically look at goals for your Facebook page or for your Twitter page, you have to really understand and really clearly identify what it is that you're trying to accomplish to move your business. And at the end of the year, when you do your 6-month review, what's going to help you feel like you're successful? Where are you measuring yourself, or where are others measuring you for your own success and performance? Business is number one. Second, then, is kind of a dovetail off of that, is marketing, because we know that marketing really helps to support business strategies. So you have your business objectives and then your communications objectives. And social media kind of falls sort of underneath both of them, because you'll be able to kind of move the needle when it comes to increasing awareness or kind of just helping to showcase different things that you're doing with your company. And if you're trying to bring in new people, maybe it's a culture initiative, that all kind of falls sort of underneath both business and communications, but there really should be heavy emphasis on business with a subgroup into your communications so that you know where social media fits into that mix. Otherwise, just saying that you have 600 fans on your Facebook page isn't really going to really do much, I guess, at the end of the year to showcase, okay, yes, but then how many of those people clicked on the link on our Facebook update and went back to our website to the strong call to the action that we had, where we asked them to fill out their contact information so we could start pounding the phones and try to get a sale out of them. Or if we're trying to recruit new people, how many times are we bringing them back to our careers page and showing them what a great place it is to work for us, so that we're able to, recruit the best and the brightest for our company. So social media is really just the channel to get you somewhere else. It should never, ever, ever be your dead end last stop of the road. It should be used as a vessel to get you from point A to point B. And point B typically is going to be your website or something similar to it, where you can really capture information, put them into your sales funnel, start to do some lead generation and lead conversion, and really help to move the needle with your business.
So if you take the goals and objectives and you try to build them into actual bullet points that, yes or no, we're doing this, yes or no, we're doing this, yes or no, we're doing this, then when it comes time to actually take a look, whether it be social media or traditional marketing, you can actually say, if we do this, which of these goals or objectives will this be measurable against?
Absolutely.
And that way, and you also talked about KPI, the key performance indicators, which is essentially, here's the metric, so we're going to measure it afterwards as well.
Definitely.
So.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay, that's good. How many of you have, as far as the companies you work with, especially if you're involved in social media, do you have a bullet point list of the objectives of your organization that you can measure your strategies against? Okay, I see a couple heads. Okay, I see one bobblehead yes, I saw another bobblehead no. Interesting. I mean, think about that for a second. If you don't actually have a well-defined list of this is what we want to accomplish, how do you know? How do you measure? And this is one of the things, and it's actually something that happens in IT as well, because IT, like marketing, is somewhat of a supporting organization in that we're supposed to essentially give services to allow the company to grow, to succeed and all that kind of stuff. If we're not aligned with the same goals and objectives of the company, how do we know if in terms of implementing IT, how do we know if we're successful? So, and unfortunately, goals and objectives for a company is about as unsexy as you get. It's not cool.
Unless you put it in a PowerPoint like this.
It's, no. Okay, this is a very unsexy goal and objective document. Oh yeah.
It is though. It is tricky because it's important. You want to make sure that when you're launching social media channels and you're going from 0 to something, what is that 0 to something, and where do you find success? Is it because you have 50 new fans, 100? You look at some of these bigger consumer companies that have hundreds of thousands or millions of fans, and you think, well, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get there. How in the world will I ever get that many people? Well, I think the key there is to really help to go back to those business objectives and those goals and your audience identification and say, you know what, if there are 5 key trade publications that I want to get in front of because I know they're going to talk about my company or my product or my experts or my CEO or whatever the case may be, maybe all you really care about is getting those 5. And those 5 are going to be the most critical to your business, because the small newspaper out in Idaho might not write about you, and just because they're following you doesn't really mean that they're helping to move the needle for your business. They're not really helping to generate awareness in the key areas that you're looking for. So having those identified goals and objectives really helps you hone in your efforts, and it helps, I think, from some of that waste where you feel like you're constantly moving, but you're not really generating anything that you feel as if it's meaningful. And everyone's strapped for time. Social media is extremely deceiving. It seems super fun. You're thinking, of course I can write a tweet. It's 140 characters. Who couldn't write 16 words of copy? But when you actually get down into it and you think about the nuances of how you optimize that one little piece of content, the links you include, the hashtagging, how you have to short phrase yourself to make sure that you're conveying your entire message, it actually ends up taking quite a lot of time. So if you're not really clearly identified of what direction you're planning to take and what that roadmap looks like for yourself, you end up spending a lot more time than you really anticipate doing, and at the end of the day, you're not even really sure if it's effective. You think, oh my gosh, woohoo, I got 5 new followers, but what does that mean? Are they the right people? Are they people who are actually going to help move your business? Or is it somebody that just accidentally happened upon your account and they liked you, and that's great because it'll help to boost your numbers a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not going to help to tie back to those business objectives that you set for yourself. So it's okay, I guess is what I'm saying, if you only identify 5 people in this category, 10 people in this category. And of course, you'll want to continue to increase that as much as you can, but also go back and you can, as you're reporting out to somebody, and maybe it's yourself or maybe it's somebody else, you can say, listen, these numbers might not look as impressive as Coca-Cola, but let me tell you why. Let me dissect this for you and show you that we have 5 key media following us. 10 of our top 20 customers are following us, and our goal is to get the next 5 on board by the end of this quarter. And there's ways that you can do some small adjustments here and there so that you're showing the value and you're making meaningful connections and engagement with the right people, and not just inflating your numbers for the sake of having a big number on your page. It's not necessarily going to always work for your business the way that you want it to.
So let's do something real quick. This kind of gets into this list that you've got. These 5 things sound actually pretty daunting. Mm-hmm. You know, as if we got to bring in a consulting firm or whatever. Can you just go through each of these and is there an exercise that a company could do that would give them at least a starting point on these?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first 2 are hopefully something that's already innately within your organization, and whether you've really sat down and put pen to paper and actually listed your goals and objectives or listed your key audiences. I think if everyone literally took just an hour or so, and whether it's by yourself or you get a small team to brainstorm, I think that can actually be one of the best exercises to make sure that everybody within your organization, that you want to have some say in how this is executed across multiple marketing channels, not necessarily just social media. Get those people in the room, or maybe you start the list yourself, and I think you'd be surprised at how easy it is to actually get those ideas out on paper and what clarity it will bring to your marketing objectives overall, even beyond social media. A lot of times, you'll use something like social media as an entry point because everything else has been running, since the beginning of time. You've been doing direct marketing, you've been doing email marketing, you've been doing all these things already. So sometimes it takes something a little new and fresh to get you to hit the reset button. And I think just sitting down and putting pen to paper will actually bring some clarity to your overall efforts to see if it's actually working or not. So I think, just being able to say, this is our goal, this is our objective, these are who we would identify as our key audiences, that's actually the best way, I think, to get started. And then bringing in the right people to make sure that all of your ideas mesh up and that they're all in alignment. So I think those were the first 2. The other 3 bullets, SEO strategy, mobile marketing, and digital strategy, I think everybody can sometimes be a little bit different when it comes to the SEO strategy. I'm not 100% sure how you all work within your businesses, so I think some people, when you have your, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm Michelle Bakers here. What does SEO stand for?
Sure, it's search engine optimization. So it's the way that you organize keywords and phrasing within the online space, so that when people go to search for you, or just find you in the online space overall, that they're able to find you based on certain keywords. So like for our business, for IKEA, we're an integrated marketing communications agency. So when we optimize our website, we plug in keywords like marketing, social media, digital, public relations, and all of the things that make up our core capabilities and what we do the best for our business. So it's kind of sitting down and identifying all of the things that you do for yourself or all the things that you do for your customers. Sometimes it can be, again, if you're trying to recruit talent or something to that effect, you might want to populate certain keywords on your careers pages. But SEO is really something that just helps you to become easily found online. So if someone's plugging in a search and they say, hey, I need to find a donut shop in Hudson, then by saying donut in Hudson, then maybe that company will pop up and they'll say, okay, well there's a Dunkin' Donuts right up the street, and they're able to optimize themselves for search. So I think for search engine optimization, it can be a little overwhelming. It really just depends on where you're at, I think, with your web strategy overall and what kind of things that you're doing with your website. And that's really where SEO lies within. So you can either be thinking about maybe updating your website. I think that's the best time to really think about SEO, is when you're in a place where you feel like you want to make some adjustments with the way that your website is outwardly facing. That would probably be the best time to think about SEO and really locking in on some of those keywords that you can then apply to other strategies for marketing too. Mobile marketing is kind of the same way. So mobile marketing is growing and a lot more people are using their phones and their computers these days. So you also want to be thinking about how people are able to interact with you on their phones. So the way that they're looking at you and finding you on their computers might be different than the way that they're looking at you and finding you when they're in the checkout line at the grocery store. So thinking about the way that your website looks, the way that people are able to easily find you, or the way that people are looking for you through social media, just making sure that all those considerations are being put into an idea as for mobile. And then digital is the same way. So digital, SEO, and mobile are all kind of under the same umbrella, but digital can be banner ads if you're doing any kind of online advertising. It can be email marketing, and it can be all of those things too. So I think really what it comes down to is just deciding which tactics you already have within your business, and maybe just considering which ones that you might want to implement or enhance, and then you can decide how that fits within social media. So if there's a way that social media can either help make these even better, or ways that these ideas can help make social media even better.
One other thing to throw in as far as the mobile marketing is keep in mind the holiday season in 2010, a majority of the growth of in terms of spending was done on laptops, desktops, people purchasing online. In 2011, the same thing was true, but a lot more people were shopping using their mobile devices, their phones. Last year, however, actual online sales from traditional laptops and desktops were pretty much flat. There was a little bit of an increase. Almost all of the increase in holiday shopping was increases. People are now buying on mobile phones, okay? That is, pardon my French, and I've said this at other lunches, that is freaking huge. All right, do not discount that. Even if you're a company that doesn't do sales online, or you think of your customer, but people are now just as comfortable getting their information on these things. And now you have how you would display, how would you present your information, whether it be website or whatever, how you would present your information to someone who is sitting at a table looking at a laptop or a desktop versus somebody who is on the go just looking at it. A good website for this is not a good website for that. A good experience for this is not a good experience for that. And if you're a company that, let's say an insurance company, and you want people to be able to update, this is great, because if they have a car accident and they can actually do something right here, that's absolutely fantastic. Whereas if they're doing something that is not involved, it has a lot of detail and a lot of information, this isn't as critical because it can't present as much information. But you have to, and this is going to do nothing but get worse or better depending upon your point of view. With our cyborg over there being the example. His visual experience is very different from this, is very different from an iPad, is very different from a laptop. You're going to start seeing, and one of our topic for October is going to be Windows Blue, all right, which is the new version of 8. It's 8.1. One of the things in 8.1 is the ability to actually move the screen by waving your hand over it. Okay, a lot of change, and you need to keep that in mind when you're looking at this stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I think that the thing that I always look at is if I'm actively following a company on Twitter and I go to click on a link that they've posted from my phone, or I'm on Facebook and I click a link, or I'm watching a YouTube video on my phone and it takes me to a web page that's not ready for my mobile device, I can't read the content, maybe it's using flash animation that doesn't play on my device, and so it's a broken experience. So the idea of supporting, not only the messaging, but how your business is being perceived. If I'm now actively participating in social media, but I don't give my users a mobile experience to support that, they start to, why are you giving me this link and I can't access it on my phone? It's frustrating. They're probably going to close their phone or go to another web page that is mobile optimized, and is that a lost customer or a lost prospect?
Yeah, actually I like that term, broken experience, because one of the terms that Microsoft came up with about 10 years or so ago was user experience. And the whole thing about you measure how successful a customer or a user of an application or a website is based on how easy it was for them to do whatever the heck it was they wanted to do, and how effective were they able to do it. And the better the user experience, the more likely they're going to continue to use the product. And for different needs, the user experience for someone who's at a shopping mall who just wants to see where the shoe store is very different from the user experience of an F-16 fighter pilot who wants to do a very complicated maneuver because he's in danger. But the end result is the same. You still want the user to be satisfied with the experience. Okay, in one case it's shoes, the other case they're still alive. But the broken experience where the user is not satisfied, how often are they going to say, because you're the only one in town who can provide that? No, there's a lot of other ones.
So I guess when it comes to kind of once you've laid the foundation, you feel like you have your goals and objectives, you know who your audiences are, and you're thinking about jumping into social media. Maybe, you know, we saw some hands in the room, there are already some people that are on social media. Again, it sounds very daunting because you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have this page or multiple pages that I have to populate with information and content. How in the world am I going to come up with something clever to say every single day? And we obviously know now that social media, just like news cycles and everything else, is becoming 24/7. So people are looking at you know, whether you're in the United States and we're just talking about a couple of time zones, or maybe we're talking about worldwide customers who might be up at 3 in the morning when you're sleeping. They're going to be looking at content on your pages pretty much around the clock. So it can seem a little overwhelming to think, gosh, like I'm not just having to put up one post per day. Now I'm thinking I need to put up multiple posts per day because on something like Twitter, your feed is going at rapid fire. Depending on how many people you have in there, I mean, every single second there's somebody else populating something new. And just because you posted something and you think, woohoo, like I posted something, something's out there in the open, it just got buried by 15 other things in a split second. And so all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, well, I thought I was doing great by doing one post per day. Now you're telling me I have to do, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 per day, including weekends. Like, what the heck? How am I ever going to come up with enough information to do that? So one of the things that we actually talk about is this idea of a content wheel. So you think about all the things that you already have within your organization, and something like this will actually maybe even spark some interest or some ideas of other types of things you could be doing. But I would be willing to bet that you have quite a few things at your fingertips already, that all you really need to do is repurpose that information. So the idea here is that the middle circle is your piece of content, and anything around that is the way that that one piece of content can be repurposed. So you should be able to put the website in the center and take the website to help you develop a good digital ad, or take your website to maybe do a video, or to take that information and write a byline article, or maybe send an email about something. So you're basically taking your same concept and you're repurposing that. Yes. So the idea here is that if you have an asset or a piece of content, in theory you should be able to repurpose it upwards of maybe 14 different times. So what this is showing you around with all these tinier circles is you're saying you have a news release, like your traditional press release. You maybe can make a video, a print advertisement, a byline article that's being authored by an expert within your organization. You might make it into a case study and talk about something really neat that you're doing or that your customers are doing. You can write a white paper, and that's also kind of like a byline article, but it's usually a little bit more technical in nature on a topic specifically and maybe not about your business directly. You could do a survey and try to survey your customers or other people in the industry. You can do email marketing, you can make a brochure, a sell sheet, you have social media, you have direct mail, you have your website, and you have a digital ad. And that's 14, and that's not even everything. Then you have other things like infographics, or if you have just photography, or if you have, there's a million different things that you can put in here. But the idea here is that you don't always have to be starting from scratch and building just one thing in and of itself. So if you have, you know, a web page that you're designing, you have to pull that information from somewhere, right? So maybe you're able to take that web page and you shrink that down into a tweet that you put on Twitter. Or maybe you take that web page and you're able to share that within an email marketing campaign, or if you're doing a one-off e-blast. So you're really just able to take that same information, the same visuals and same graphics, and repurpose them a couple of different ways. Of course, today in the discussion, we're really talking about social media. So all of these things, if you take that little red social media circle and you plug that into the middle, you should be able to take your print ad and some of the information within your print ad and tweet about it. Or maybe it's maybe the fact about, hey, we were just featured in this magazine this month, you should go to the website and check it out because they have a digital edition available. Or maybe it's a survey that you did a survey because you want to try to help sell a product, but all of the insights you gain from your customers are really interesting. So you don't want to give away all your proprietary information, but maybe you take one fact that's a generalized piece that you think is really compelling, and you say, hey, did you know that 77% of this group of people do this? And you're able to tweet that out because you've already done the work to do the survey. Why not use that information to share some of your industry knowledge with some of your followers and people who are connected to you? Same thing with the brochure. If you're going to go through all the trouble of creating a detailed brochure or a sell sheet to talk about what you do and really get into the nuances of the specs or the individual piece of information, one sentence can become one tweet. And you think about how many sentences you have written in those brochures and those sell sheets, you have a lot of content to fill. And of course, this only all works if you align it with your marketing calendar and the way that you're talking about going to market with your products or your services, or talking about the events you're going to be at, or the speaking opportunities that you've sent your CEO to, or whatever the case is. All of that feeds into this content wheel and can be repurposed and shared through social media. So once you actually sit down again and do the pen to paper thing, I think when it's up here and you're conceptualizing it, it sounds really daunting and kind of scary. But if you actually sit down and you start to think about what your calendar looks like, you'd be surprised at how much information you already have at your fingertips, and probably sitting on a shelf, maybe collecting dust, or maybe it's in a file on your server, and you're able to take that out and just repurpose it just a little bit, make it a little bit more fun and a little bit more engaging to get people to want to interact with you on social media. But you'd have quite a bit to work from just right off the bat with things you already have within your own arsenal.
And to give you an idea, and keep in mind, we're not experts, okay? And we're lazy. Put those two together. So what we'll do is we'll create, we work a lot with our blog and with our newsletter and with our luncheoners. So what'll happen is we will have, as an example, we'll put together a blog article about a topic. And it could even be a reference to another article we saw that was online. The key thing is, are we adding value to somebody by sharing this? So we put it on our blog. We then tweet with the link to the blog. We also put it on Facebook. We put it on LinkedIn. So we've repurposed that information. We also take in our e-newsletter, which if those of you who are not getting it, you'll be getting it as of today, and you can always opt out. But the newsletter is a list of all of our blog articles, first paragraph with a link to the blog. So Facebook, LinkedIn, the blog itself, the newsletter. So we've repurposed it 4 times. We will be taking this, we're videotaping it. This will go on YouTube. When it goes on YouTube, it'll also be in the blog, the newsletter, Facebook, Twitter. So we're repurposing. Now, every single thing that we do is with that goal. So if you're going to be looking to do, at this point, if you're going to be developing brochures, it should be in the back of your mind, how are you going to repurpose that? Because if you do things without any regard to repurposing it, and then you come back to it and go, okay, now what can we do with it?
Right. And you think about it too, I mean, I think when you go back to some of the basics of even just general marketing or advertising, that key phrase has always been, you have to put it in front of somebody 3 times for them to take action on it. So you either have to, give them the commercial and then give them a print article and then maybe hit them up at the grocery store or something like that. You hit them 3 times and then usually you can potentially create some kind of an actionable move of that person. The same thing applies with social media, and especially now because attention spans are so much shorter and there's so much clutter and noise out there, that it's really important to cross-promote all of your information in as many possible places as you can. So if you can take the same piece of information, that same key messages, and you just repurpose them across multiple collateral and different types of channels, then it'll really help, I think, to start to work for you, instead of you feeling like every time you have to start from scratch and you have to go back and reinvent the wheel. Here you already have all of that at your fingertips, and it's just easy to repurpose it and be making sure that you're getting those clear messages out to people that you're trying to be. Yeah, I think that definitely goes back to that idea of having a really well-oiled website and making sure that the website is working for those customers within the industry that really makes sense. So in something like insurance, where there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of differences, and you're kind of looking at the very specifics of each policy, I think having everything in one centralized place, like you mentioned, would make a lot of sense. And it's unfortunate, I think, that maybe other companies don't maybe know their customers as well. You kind of have to go through and pull to make sure that you're getting your customers what they're asking for, and that you're giving them the information in a way that's easiest consumable for them. So I think that's an excellent point. And I think, the interesting thing more about social media, again, is that social media shouldn't be the place where you get all your information about policies. There's no way you'd ever be able to cram all that information into Facebook. It's just not going to happen. But to Bob's point, if you're able to really piggyback off of things that are going on in the industry, and there's key trends that are taking place, or big news that's coming out about policies, or things coming down from government, or whatever the case is, those are the types of teaser bites that you can include on social media, where people are more easily consuming smaller pieces of news and information. But then you always have to include that link back to the website to make sure that once they jump out and they say, okay, you caught my attention, that's the headline, or that's, the news scrolling at the bottom of the screen, what's the deeper story? Where's the actual meaty information that I need to make a decision as a purchaser, and not just trying to give me the flashy information that gets me excited to click back to your website. And that's, I think, what Mike was saying earlier, where some companies maybe have that bit of a disconnect or broken experience, is they get people really amped up and excited through their marketing collateral, you send them back to your website, and then the experience maybe falls a little flat and it's not what they were expecting, and it might be potential loss of a sale or a convert, depending on what you're trying to do. So So I think that's a great, excellent point actually, that social media shouldn't be the place where you house all of the specifics of your information. Take one piece of information out, one really interesting fact, or maybe your key differentiator, feature or benefit that sets you apart from your competitors. Make sure that you have a link in there that takes you back to the website where it blows out into a full web page or a really easy, consumable place where people can get all the information because you teased them with the right piece of information to catch their attention. That's a great point.
I haven't even gotten to the point where I have found that companies are actually represented on Facebook. If I want to look at a company, I go to LinkedIn.
That's a great point.
It's clean.
Yep, that's a great point. So there's two things to that. You're absolutely right. So Facebook doesn't make life easy on anybody, and they have their own special algorithm that they call EdgeRank. So Facebook actually determines, so say you're on Facebook and you follow 100 people and 100 businesses. Facebook decides, they say, you know what, she's really busy. I know there's no way she'll ever be able to look at all 100 people and all 100 businesses. Based on your activity level, as Facebook, we're going to tell you what we think is the most important, and we're going to put that into your feed. So when you log into Facebook, Facebook automatically compiles the information in a way where they think it's the most relevant to you. And it's based on your connection with people, so whether you're considered a family member or maybe just an acquaintance you met a couple days ago. It depends on how often you're engaging with those people, so whether you're commenting, liking, and sharing their posts. And it also just depends on the timing and where they think that you have similar interests, or if it's a business, they'll say, well, she said she really likes this movie and she likes this book and she shops at these stores. Maybe then she won't care so much about this company, even though she already told us that she liked them by clicking on the like button. So Facebook actually kind of compartmentalizes what they think is the most important to you as a user, which can be really frustrating to brands, because actually when it comes down to what EdgeRank does is, as a brand, you might have hundreds and hundreds of people who like your page, but only between 12 to 15% of your total likes ever end up seeing your content. So you can post a bunch of different times throughout the day, but based on what Facebook does, and they shift things around with their crazy formulations, you might only be able to reach eyeballs of 12 to 15% of that total base of people. So it is really frustrating. Facebook does that. It's very sneaky, and it's really frustrating to a lot of companies because they take all the time and effort to really optimize their page and put out really good content. And then Facebook basically takes it and filters it out and says, well, you thought it was interesting and important, but we don't, so we're not going to show this to anybody that likes your page. So that can be really frustrating. But there is one way that as an individual, you can actually bypass all of the clutter of what your friends and your family are saying. And if you go to Facebook, there's actually a way on the right-hand column, where am I facing? The right-hand column, where there's, it'll actually tell you that you can go bypass all of your friends and family, and you can go directly to the brand pages that you've liked. So if you liked Coca-Cola and Target and Best Buy, rather than seeing Best Buy and then your aunt and then your best friend and then your cousin, you'll actually just click on the brand pages column, and it'll streamline all of those company pages, and it'll filter out all of the people. So there's a way that you can connect directly with companies. It doesn't necessarily help with the whole EdgeRank situation, because EdgeRank will still organize the information the best way Facebook thinks it knows how. But it'll help you to bypass seeing a company, or maybe you didn't get to see anything that Best Buy said because it was filtered out because your cousin just posted 16 pictures of her daughter, and therefore that's what showed up in your feed instead. So this way, if you're looking just for your companies, you can do that within Facebook too.
Well, Facebook has a real big problem with me because I look at things and very seldom go to it because I think it's garbage.
Right.
And they don't have a profile for me to act with.
It is tricky. Facebook is very, it's kind of growing into this giant monster. I think they're trying to take over the world because they just keep doing things. With Facebook or with LinkedIn?
Well, LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
But Facebook wants me to
Yeah, Facebook
do
is
other
a
things rather than
right.
They keep trying to draw me in, shall we say.
Yep.
And
They very much are. Yeah, that's a great point though.
And that does bring up another point. If your organization is dealing with consumers versus a B2C versus a B2B, there are definite differences in terms of strategies. And how would you approach it? If a company sells mostly to consumers versus a company sells mostly to business, I mean, the high altitude core stuff remains the same.
Absolutely.
But what would be some of the differences there?
Honestly, it would really have to go back to what your business goals and objectives are, because that's really going to help
Again with
to
that?
drive what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So if you're trying to get someone to buy a product, if you're doing, if you have your own e-commerce site, you might be driving them back to your own website. If you're working through retailers, you have different types of partnerships that way, then you might have different things you need to do to drive people back to a Target or Walmart or something like that to get the sale where you need it to be. If you're a B2B company, then you're just going to be connecting with a different set of audiences. So your customers might be a little bit different, your partnerships, maybe you're dealing with OEMs or dealers or other types of manufacturing partners. Maybe it's associations or more government type places. So it's really just finding the right channel to connect with the people who you're talking with. So your strategy is going to be a little bit different on Facebook than it's going to be on Twitter than it is on LinkedIn, because first of all, the channels themselves are different. They offer different types of resources to your audiences, and you also know that you might hit different audiences on different channels. So whereas you might be able to connect with moms on Facebook because you want to try to connect with them. You have this great product. And you're trying to get them to buy your new product, and they're more active on Facebook. Maybe if you're trying to connect with the design community and the people who actually put the thought and effort into designing your product, they might not be on Facebook. They might be talking about high-level technical things on Twitter, and that's where you'd want to make deeper connections with them. The media doesn't typically do a lot of responsiveness direct to businesses on Facebook. They'll talk to the people who are consuming their news, like the readers and the viewers and stuff. But if you're a company trying to get your product talked about, they're not going to necessarily talk to you and say, oh yeah, we'll cover your product in the next issue of the magazine or in tomorrow's edition of the newspaper. They're sourcing their news and information through Twitter. So I think it just really, again, has to go back to what your objectives are, because if you're trying to get more coverage in local newspapers, you're going to be better off communicating to media on Twitter. If you're trying to do something that's more technical in nature, maybe Twitter. If you're looking to go direct to consumer, you might have a lot more of success doing something on Facebook because it is more visual in nature. You have timeline. Now they're doing things like Instagram. They're integrating with Pinterest. You're doing Instagram videos now, and there's all these things taking place where it's just a more user-friendly experience. If you're a more visual person, usually that drills down to consumers. If you're talking to an engineer, or you're talking to a product designer, or you're talking to a manufacturer, they might not be distracted by all the glitz and the glam of Facebook. You might be able to catch their attention more if you give them a really interesting fact that helps to drive what they're doing in their industry. They click out to the website and they're just interested in reading text because they bury their nose in the book and in journals, and they're more interested in something like that. So it just really depends on going back to what your core ideas are and what you're trying to accomplish on which channel you go to for B2B or B2C.
And two comments on that. Number one is ask your customers. What do they use? What did they use to find you? Now you got to be careful about that, because there could be potential clients that are using other mediums that you're not represented in. But absolutely ask your customers, how did they find you? What was it? What search terms did they use? Because you're obviously fulfilling a need that they had and they found you somehow. So look for that. And the other thing is, don't base it on what you would do. This is especially true for us. We're an IT company, and we think like IT. We're cyborgs, for crying out loud, okay? And so we can't run into, and I've talked to a lot of other IT companies who run into that, who essentially, I would look for us this way, but it's not us we're trying to communicate with. We're trying to communicate with business people. And I think a lot of other companies fall into that same sort of trap. You're really looking for stuff that appeals to your potential customers that doesn't appeal to you.
So once you've identified audiences, business objectives, you're starting to think, what channels do I go on? What do I do from here? Where do I go now? This is just a very high level idea of how you can execute social media within your organization. And some of the key buckets that you might want to be thinking about as you get started, or maybe you're already on social media and you're thinking about doing a refresh, and things that you might want to consider doing for your organization. So the first thing, depending on how big your company is, you might want to consider doing a social media policy. IKEA, we have about 55 employees, and we have a social media policy in place that's with our employee handbook, so that when people come and join our organization, they have kind of just a set of rules, expectations, guidelines, whatever you'd like to call them, to say, you're coming to work for us, we realize that you're going to be active on social media. If you're communicating on your own personal page as Amanda, these are some of the things we'd ask you to be mindful of and to be considering as you're communicating on your social media channels that are personal. Akia obviously is very active on social media, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and the rest. So as Amanda, if I'm going to be then talking on Akia's social media channels and I'm going to be commenting, sharing, or contributing in some way, here's a couple of guidelines, again, or expectations that we're asking you to follow as an employee of our company. So it's never a bad idea to have something like this in place. It really just helps to set some general guidelines and best practices so that should something happen in the future, then you're not thinking, gosh, I wish I would have communicated this to our employees sooner. We thought it was common knowledge that you shouldn't, post that you were having a bad day and you were thinking about quitting. Or that, you were not very happy with the customer and you decided to go off about how you had this horrible conversation and you named the customer by name. There's all these things that you think might, potentially be common sense, but when it comes down to it in the heat of the moment, it could actually end up, proving negative for your company, and there are countless examples of where that can take place. So having a policy in place, big or small, I think ours is maybe 6 or 7 pages. We're a marketing agency, and so there's a lot of things in there that we wanted to make sure we communicate. You might be able to shrink it down into 6 bullet points, or maybe it's just 1 page. It's whatever works for your company, and it's whatever you feel most comfortable sharing with your employees. So policy, identifying social media team, and I use the word team lightly because we know that some people wear multiple hats, and maybe you're the director of sales and you're also social media liaison, or maybe you're marketing and social media, and maybe it's 1 person, and maybe it's a half a person, and maybe it's 6 people. But if you can clearly identify who sort of owns social media within your organization, all the things that we've talked about up until this point, I think, get made a lot easier because you're able to maybe direct it to 1 or 2 or however many people and say, this person owns it, there's no ambiguity, we're asking this person to take on this role of social media, and therefore you're able to better map to some of those goals and objectives and some of the success rates that you're looking for. Rapid response plan is also something kind of within that mix, is that now you're on social media, and that's great. Rapid response, I think, sometimes has a negative connotation, and people think, oh, so this is like when there's a crisis and people talk about a product failure, or there's a disgruntled employee, or someone accidentally shared the stock information, or financials information from our company. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive. It can be, hey, somebody complimented us on Facebook. Like, we should probably say thank you. And sometimes you get all excited in the moment and, you think to yourself, wow, like, thanks, Marcy, that was awesome. But you don't think to maybe communicate that out on your Facebook page to thank that person for recognizing the good work that you're doing in your company. Maybe it's a direct request for a product or service information. Someone says, hey, Akia, we would love to learn more about your marketing capabilities. Well, if it's out there, maybe we're not responding to it. We don't know how to respond to that. We don't have the process in place and the right people to ask to make sure we have the right information to fill that request. Or maybe it's somebody just saying, hey, I'm in the greater Cleveland area and I'm looking for a marketing agency. If Akia's not paying attention, then it's a missed opportunity for us, because here's some person who's ripe and primed for the opportunity for us to swoop in and say, sure, we'd love to help you. Our name's Akia and this is the things we can do for you. So maybe they're not directly asking us as Akia. They might not know that Akia exists, but if we're listening and paying attention, we're able to capitalize on those opportunities and possibly convert a sale for our business. So those are just some of the key basic things that you would want to incorporate in a rapid response plan to be able to decide how you would respond to that in real time. Because unfortunately, someone might say something today, and if you wait until Saturday to respond, it might be too late, positive or negative. Someone might have already found the donut that they were looking for because they were hungry that minute, and if you didn't see it till tomorrow, they've already gotten their need filled. Or on the flip side of it, if they had a bad experience and you take a couple of days to respond to it, maybe all of a sudden that one comment spurred 20 other people to talk about the same issues they've had with your product or your business, and now all of a sudden it's become a more viral, more serious situation. And if you would have been able to say, listen, we're really sorry you had this trouble, we'd love to have a bigger conversation with you. If you wouldn't mind privately messaging us, with your contact information, we'll shoot you an email or give you a phone call and make sure we can make this right for you and find out how we can turn this into a positive experience for you. So that's all within rapid response. Channel management, we've talked about this a little bit already. Brand consistency, what your business card looks like, what your email looks like, what your website looks like, all of your Facebook and your Twitter and all of your social media channels should also look the same way. Your logo should be the same, the way that you depict yourself with the different pictures that you choose and the wording and the verbiage that you use should all be the same on social media across all channels and with your marketing communications overall. Audience profile, we talked about that a lot already. Industry sourcing. So you can actually go through, and we talked about this before, kind of aligning yourself with different partners, organizations, things like that, where you're able to sort of shine and showcase your expertise as thought leaders. You want to be doing that within your own organization, just like normal conversation, kind of what's happening right now. If you have one person talking at you for so long, you kind of eventually tune out because no one's asking your opinion, no one's noticing that you have something important to say too. So it's important to be kind of showcasing some of the other things that are happening within the industry and creating those partnerships and fusing some alliances so you can lean on them if you ever needed them in the future. It also helps to create some credibility for you as a business, because if you're aligned with say we're talking building and construction, if you're aligned with EPA or LEED or different government associations, people are going to put more weight against you as a business because they're seeing that you're communicating with some of those key leaders in the industry yourself.
So is that kind of what's going on here?
Yeah. We're sitting here with the best
Cool.
of the best. I'm aligning myself with the best of the best.
Yeah.
Content development. So again, we talked about what it means to being able to populate your channels once you have them. Marketing calendar is huge. If you know that you're going to have email communications, you're going to be shooting a product video or maybe a company overview video. If you're going to be writing a case study or you're changing your website, all of those things should be combined into one big calendar that you're able to look at maybe monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever makes sense for your organization, so that you're able to align social media with all of the key things you're already doing with your marketing mix. Social media editorial calendar is just a way to organize your information day in and day out. So if you're on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and you're trying to figure out how much you should be updating every single day, if you organize that into a calendar and you say, well, this week, the week of, what are we, in July 15th, on Monday we're going to do 2 Facebook posts, and then on Wednesday we're going to do 1 Facebook post, and then you're able to say on Twitter we're going to do tweets this time, we're going to update LinkedIn this time. It just helps to create a roadmap or a blueprint for yourself to be able to make sure that you're conveying all the messages you want to, you're actively participating on all the channels, so you kind of avoid that roller coaster effect where you are really active on Facebook for a month and then you drop off for 2 months. Same thing as if you're having a conversation with somebody. If you're talking with them and they're conversing two-way conversation, then all of a sudden you just sit silent and they're kind of like waiting for you to finish and you're not saying anything, they're eventually just going to tune out and walk away. And sometimes they'll come back if you have something to say that's interesting in a couple of weeks, but sometimes they don't, and they just say, you know what, it was great listening and talking with them for a couple of weeks, but then they went away and I don't know what's happening. I'm going to unlike their page and I don't have any reason to go back and listen to them. So the marketing calendar and the social media editorial calendar really help to create some consistency and frequency so that you're not finding these radio silences and trying to fill these voids and not really knowing where you're going, what direction you're taking. 411 is just a way that you can take the information. There's a lot of ways you can convey this. 411, seeing people break it down into percentages. Basically, one of the ones stands for yourself. You are able to promote whatever you want about your company, whether it's your great people, it's your great product, it's your great service. That's one of the ones. One of the other ones is not about you as an individual, as a company, and saying, we have this great product, we have great service. That other one is, this is our area of expertise. These are the subject matters that we're really knowledgeable on. So rather than saying, we're going to promote Amanda on the fact that she's a great employee for us at IKEA, and we're going to talk about the fact that, we had this great case study and that we worked with this client to do this really great social media campaign. Instead, it's going to be, that other one is going to be, hey, as IKEA, we have some expertise in creating a social media policy. Have you considered doing a social media policy? Or, are you paying attention to your settings on your social media channels? You might want to make some of that stuff private and be considering how open, with your communication you're being. So it's more about the topic of conversation, not so much about me as Amanda, more about talking about the things that we have some expertise in and ways that we can position ourselves as thought leaders. Those are just 2 of the ones. The 4 is actually just paying attention and conversing with everybody else. So it's taking some of those key partners and audiences that we've already identified and helping to make them look like stars and saying, hey Bill, you wrote this great article and we think it's really great. We're going to share this with Art Network because we think that what you did was really smart and you have a lot of great insights to share. So it's really helping to put somebody else on a pedestal and forging those same relationships in those businesses. So, if you give somebody your business card, then it would be kind of expected that they would give you their business card back. There's a reciprocation taking place. Same thing with social media. You don't want to just constantly project and commercialize yourself. You want to be taking somebody else's information, absorbing it, and then sharing that with the rest of your network so that you're showing that you find value in what they're doing and you're creating a relationship with them and not just a one-way communication street. And the last thing is monitoring measurement. We've talked about this a lot already, but there's different ways that you can go through creating some measurement reports for yourself and coming up with key metrics to help measure yourself against. Link tracking is actually one of the ways. Bob was mentioning this earlier, and I was saving my comments for the slide. But one of the ways you can actually see which channels are working the hardest for you is going through Google and doing a tagging campaign. I don't know if some of you are familiar with doing that, but you can actually go through. Google makes it really easy and free for you to go through and do a tag campaign so that you can actually source out where your information is coming from and what's driving the traffic back to your website. So if you have an e-newsletter, you have a Facebook page, you have Twitter, and you have digital advertising, within that link, that URL, you can add custom sourcing and tagging to the back end of that, so you can actually track where people are coming to your website, which pages they're landing on, and where they're coming from. So it's just a way to help you decide, maybe without having to survey them and say, hey, how did you find us? Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you don't have that luxury for one reason or another. This is a way you can kind of do that without having to go directly and ask those people, is setting up a campaign that way. Social listening, we talked about this a little bit too, about making sure that you're paying attention to opportunities. You can do that through using a third-party tool and being able to listen to some of the keywords or how people are talking about you or your product. A lot of great tools out there, some of them are free, some of them aren't, but there's ways that you can at least be monitoring the conversation to see where you might be able to interject. And then creating that metrics dashboard is also really important. Just being able to compile all the information, measuring them against the key business goals and objectives that you set for yourself, whether you do this monthly, quarterly, or yearly. It is just a really, really, really good idea to make sure that you're measuring yourself. Otherwise, you're kind of just doing things to do things. You're not really sure what's sticking to the wall and what's falling. And at the end of the year, the end of the quarter, what have you, you're not really sure if your efforts are worthwhile and how you're actually able to move the needle. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what's the most important is, yeah, you had fun going on and posting the picture, but what did it actually do to help your business? So it's making sure that you have some measurable objectives to work against is really important. This is basically just kind of a summary of what we talked about today. So you have to put a lot of work into social media before social media can actually start to work for you. It's all based on business objective strategy and just making sure that everything at the core is sound so that you can start to build out from there and make marketing work for you. Things like contests and promotions and fun things like that are fun, but they don't work unless you have the foundation developed. So you have to have an audience built. You know, you can have a contest, but if you only have 5 people looking at your Facebook page, you're not going to get anybody participating. It's not actually going to work the way that you want it to. So building the foundation, making sure that you have some of these key things locked into place will allow you to move forward and do some of the fun, fancy campaigns you see other people doing too. Once you get some of the groundwork laid, there's a couple of cool things you can do. We have 2 quick slides that just encapsulate some aspirational big brands that I'm sure you're very familiar with, of things that people are doing where you can have a lot of fun. One of them is Target. They have their Summer Up campaign running right now. They have, you know, some consistencies across all of their channels. Facebook, they have obviously Summer Up. It's all kind of working together. I took a couple screen grabs. The one up at the very top is Vine. Not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a video capability that Twitter has created. It's 6 seconds of video that loops continuously. Not a lot of time, but you can have a lot of fun with it. What Target actually did was they created a looped video of Light Bright, where you go from there being kind of this like thunderstormy, gloomy type of a light bright into this shining sun with like a summer landscape, and it loops all the way through to help promote their Summer Up campaign. They also have commercial that they're cross-promoting on YouTube. You may have seen commercials already on TV that are helping to promote their Summer Up, trying to get people to come in and buy beach balls and blankets and bikinis and all the things that they're trying to promote within their stores. But what the key is here is that they're pulling through the campaign through all of their social media channels, which is really important. And the last one here is GE. Even though GE is a pretty big brand, they do a lot in the heavy machinery and industrial sector. So we know them. They have appliances. They do lighting. They do things that are more, I guess, consumerized. But they also do a lot of really cool things to kind of talk about their aviation and their big heavy machinery and some of the things we're doing with turbines and all this kind of stuff. So they do this badass machines thing. They have a Pinterest board. They're on Instagram and they're showcasing some of their big heavy machinery and getting people excited. The AV Geek hashtag, and then they're also doing buying videos too and talking about the technology aspect of it, not necessarily just go in the store and buy the light bulb, but here's the technology behind it and why it works. So there are companies like that are able to take the technical side of things too.
And I think one of the key things here, we've kind of touched on this in a couple places, is that grow into this. This is not something, especially when you look at some of these, like this issue, you don't necessarily have to have all of these things uniquely done immediately as that's your strategy. Look at governance as far as overall. Yeah, who's doing what and why? Fairly straightforward. And then as you grow and as you do increase the complexity, then you can start branching it out and getting more specific. But this way you've got a foundation of an actual strategy. And the same thing when you look at the wheel, you know, you look at that, well, I don't have that many marketing, that's okay. You know, you can have just a wheel with a couple of spokes in it. And as you add to it, then you're advancing, but you've already got kind of a design and a foundation, which you're not going to go back and go, okay, now we have all these 15 things. How can we reorganize them again? So.
And the measurement aspect really just does help to decide what's working for you and what's not. So rather than feeling like you have to go out and do everything at once, it's all very scalable. And if you try one thing, it's a trial and error, and you think it's going to work, and maybe you do a contest and you see it doesn't work for you, then maybe you don't do a contest that same way or on that same channel. You can try something a little bit different next time. But unless you are measuring, it's hard to know. You don't really know if you're successful or not unless you're taking a look you know, on an ongoing basis to make sure that what your efforts are actually working for you.
Give you a perfect example. In one of our newsletters about a year or so ago, we just threw in at the top of our intro, we said, answer these 3 questions. The answers are found throughout the newsletter, and we'll put you in a drawing for a $50 gift certificate at ThinkGeek. Okay? Now, I could tell what in order to read, you'd have to go to the blog to read the articles to get the information. And the first time we did that, we had like 25 people. And that was, you know, that was a number of people. That was more than we expected. So we did that and we measured, and yeah, there was a higher than expected opening of the blog file, so that worked. So we did it a second time. Went right back. Nobody cared the second time. So it was something we did unique that worked once, and we'll do it again, but we're not going to do it on a regular because we measured it. You know, the first time was a success, second time not so much. As opposed to, yeah, we think it worked.
Yep. Perfect example. Perfect example.
If we can do it. So, any summary?
Well, really, I guess I know we kind of maybe talked about something a little bit different than what you were maybe expecting coming into today, and I know it's kind of a lot to think about, and I'm sure your wheels are cranking in your head. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them right now. I have my business cards up on the table if you want to email me or give me a call if you have any questions about what we covered. Definitely make sure you get your hands on the PowerPoint in case you wanted to reference back to it. But I guess just thank you for being here, and we'd love to hear more from you. And if you have any questions, we're here to help.
Yay.